These thoughts up in my head, things I never did. I took some L's, but I'm still here. I got these thoughts up in my head. I toss and turn about some things I never said. I got regrets about some things I never did. I took some risks and took some L's, but I'm still here. And I know.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Overthinking Thoughts Pod. I'm your host, Ed, and as always, journey with me as we pursue greatness in a world full of chaos. Here we are with episode 36 called The Walk, inspired by my 2-year-old son who gave me a message as we were walking in the church. So this is going to be a good one, I think, and I hope that it blesses you and it allows you to bless others, because that's really what the podcast is about. So thank you to all the supporters, everybody who's been tuning in week week out, supporting me, commenting, sharing the videos. Man, I really appreciate y'all. So I definitely I can't move forward without saying thank you to you all who are making this podcast what it is. To all the mothers, I forgot to do this last week, but to all the mothers, I hope you had a great Mother's Day. Motherly figures, those who are taking care of others and may not have the title of mother, but do mother things. We see you and we appreciate you as well. So I hope things went well. We got my wife some shoes. I got her some Air Forces. She don't really wear like she's very like chill with her shoes, but very glad she got them. And they look good. So, I'm glad she got those. And we just spent time with her, hung out with her, just let her know how much we appreciate her. And that was big because she's like Superwoman. She does a lot behind the scenes. She's always making sure that our kids are taken care of. And she supports me. She supports this podcast. She's been praying for me, but I think before we even like started dating for real. So, it's good to have that. So happy Mother's Day and love you to my beautiful wife who supports me. So thank you for everything. To my moms, happy Mother's Day to you, of course. She got spoiled too. She sent this video of all like stuff that got sent to her. She had like flowers and candies and all types of stuff. But it's good to tell the women in your life that are doing well how much you appreciate them. I think that's important. So, although we did joke about it, we were sitting out at a brunch on Sunday, went out after church, and I was like, man, look at all this, man. They got Mother's Day specials and breakfast and stuff. I was like, they be telling the dads, like, here's these tools, just go fix something, right? But it is what it is. But it doesn't matter. We appreciate our wives, my wife. Hopefully, if you're married, you appreciate your wife, your mothers, all those that have played a role. The world's a better place with strong women in it. So thank you all. I hope you had a great week. As for me, things are going well. We're gonna jump into this podcast and had some great interactions with people on TikTok who's been, commenting and sharing. So appreciate y'all and people who've been sharing the stories on Instagram. Love y'all for that. I really appreciate it. As always, if you ever want to follow, you can follow me over on Instagram at OverthinkingThoughtsPod, and I'm also at TikTok on OverthinkingThoughtsPod. We stream on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts. I'm also on YouTube as well. So, if you want the visual, check us out YouTube as well. Okay, that's enough stalling. Let's jump into it. So, Sunday we were walking to the church, and my son and my youngest son was so eager to get out of his car seat, and so get him out, and he wants to just go. And he's familiar with the place, but obviously, if I told him to walk to church, he's not gonna know where to go. He's two, and he's trying to like I'm holding his hand, and he's trying to walk ahead of me. And as he's walking ahead of me, he's like picking up speed, and I'm like, man, you got to slow down. Where he's like trying to break free and not feel guided, and then he ends up kind of stumbling a little bit, and he scratched his knee a little bit. And when he scratched his knee, he kind of like stopped and he's looking at his knee. So he's obviously making sure that he's okay. But then he also is looking back to me to make sure that I'm there. And then once he kind of got his bearings back together, he's like, okay, I'm good now. And then I noticed his pace changed. He started walking with me and allowing me to lead him to where we needed to go. And then it got to the point where I could tell, it was early, so he was getting a little tired. So I just picked him up and carried him. And then as time went on, He did pretty good in the church service. We ended up he likes to walk outside from time to time when he's restless. So I take him out and he kind of explores things, and which is really cool because he's kind of out there, but he's also making sure that I'm like guiding him. And that made me think, like, when he stumbled, he tried to go too far. And he was trying to do it on his own. He was so eager, so excited, and he was trying to go. And he ended up stumbling and someone hurting himself. And I thought to myself, like, how many times do we as humans do that in our walks of life? Specifically with our walk with Christ. And it made me kind of reflect on my journey as well as just the journey in general. But we have this, I'm going to call it comfort, where we feel like we know what we're doing. Oh, I've been here before. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. And then we try to do it on our own. And then when we stumble and fall, we look to everyone trying to figure out what was the reason. And a lot of times it's because of us. It's because of us being stubborn. And so I thought about it and I was like, my son was more comfortable afterwards when he realized that I was going to lead him where he needed to go and that I made sure that his situation was secure. And I think sometimes in life, we tend to forget God in the process of what we're trying to do with life, right? We try to walk too far forward and wonder why we get stuck or why we're burnt out or why the job isn't what we need to be or why the relationship isn't what it needs to be. And a lot of times it's simply because we did not trust God in the process, or we're trying so hard to reach a breakthrough. We've been praying for it. Lord, I need my miracle. Lord, I'm just looking for a change. I need my passion. I need direction. I need this. I need that. But then there's these moments where we're trying to do it on our own and we keep wondering why we fall. And we fall because we're not being led the right way. We're trying to do the supernatural without accessing the person who gives us that power. And, the reason why we don't reach our breakthrough, I think, is because we spend more time trying to break away from God, and then we try to do our own thing. And so we try to walk this path, but we have no idea of the direction it can take us, which is why we should always allow God to lead us because he knows the way. And I was telling my wife this, and I was like, yeah, that's my biggest thing is just like we don't have breakthrough because we try to break away. My son tried to break away, he tried to run off. And she said, yeah, he's kind of like we have to be spiritual toddlers in the sense of being curious of where we're going, but also putting our hand on and say, okay, Lord, I trust where you're guiding me. So I have to give her credit for that. But think about that in your walk and what you're trying to do in life, whether you're a student, whether you are a businessman, whether you're a mother, father, whether you just got into a relationship, whether you're trying to start your own thing, whatever the case may be, everybody has different walks of life. Everybody starts on different paths. But who's guiding you? If you're trying to do it by yourself, you're going to keep running to dead ends because God prepares the way and knows the way. And if we keep trying to force our way, we'll never reach our destination. And so in Matthew, when you think about just different walks and different distractions and different obstacles and things that we face, Matthew 7, verses 13 and 14 really give us a good view of how we should walk. And so it says, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. And in this world, I think there's so many people that are going through the wide gate because there's so much out there, from easy access to temptation to instant gratification and satisfaction. Like all those things play a factor, but the end goal is what God has for us, which is better than anything that we can have on earth. And so to break this down from Bible ref, it states that the choice most people will make is the wide gate leading to an easy path. The imagery of a wide gate implies something easy to see and easy to get through. It also suggests something that accommodates our preferences. Wide gates give us more choice over how to pass through uh, than do narrow ones. Since what lies on the other side of that gate appears to be easy, it's the choice most people will make. This has said, this has sad, heart-rending implications for the eternal fate of most people. Being wide also implies that the gate leading to destruction accepts many different approaches. Scripture is clear that there is only one way to salvation, which is Christ. Those who prefer to go their own way are simply going to their own doom. In other sermons, Jesus also indicates that he is the sole means by which men can be saved. God saves, God creates our path, God leads us. We deviate off the path, we get stuck, we get frustrated, we turn to God and ask why. We finally get back on pace, and then we get comfortable, and then we try to go our own way again. And that's where things are purely complicated because we keep doing more than what we should rather than let God take control over what we're supposed to do. And another thing to break down is, as we're going or learning about these different gates. So there's the wide, but the narrow gate opens to the hard way of following Jesus. This gate is narrow because there's only a single means of salvation, which is Christ. And I will sit here and be vulnerable and tell you that, as I'm trying to learn more about God, I need to read my Bible more. I know I need to be in my word more. So when I get frustrated or I get stressed or I feel anxious, a lot of that is simply because I haven't turned to God and asked him for his guidance. I'm trying to do it by myself, you know. Here I am sitting up having these panic attacks and worrying and adding stress to my life, or being back in the day turning to things that I don't need. And it's it's taking me away from where I'm supposed to be. And a lot of us want this breakthrough moment, but won't sit down and break down what our barriers are with Christ himself. So as we're walking, it can be hard to kind of navigate the process. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, okay, we're taught that we got to move fast paced because we don't know, and people are taking advantage, getting opportunities. Look, at the end of the day, what's meant for you is meant for you, and when God's preparing it, it could be one day, could be 1 year, could be 10 years, but when it's for you, the wait and the journey and the process of what it is, when you get there, you'll be fully prepared. You try to rush without God, you might end up where God wants you to be, but you're not equipped with everything that God wanted to give you. And so now you're trying to figure out, well, how did I get here? And this is not what I wanted. It's like, you pursue a job, you get there, and then you feel unfulfilled. You pursue a relationship and you realize you're not compatible. You pursue, I don't know, business opportunities and you realize you don't know anything about what you're doing. Could it be that you missed out on the wisdom and the knowledge and the tools that were supposed to prepare you that God had along the way? Always going back to, when you disrupt the process, you disrupt the journey, right? Or when you rush the process, you disrupt the journey. If you're trying to rush through it, it could happen. Think about like people who speed through traffic, right? When it's crazy, like congested, and people are trying to weave in and out of traffic and get in the fast lane, and they switch back over to slow lane. And then here you are pacing yourself, and then you're passing them in the lane that they thought was the fastest. It happens more often than it should. And we also are sinners who go that route from time to time. Walking is very important, and where you head is very important, because not only are you walking a path that is meant for you, but in a in a very distinct way, you're also leading others as you walk. Like, I think about that, like, as a coach. I have to laugh because I remember, you know, I had to I'm talking to high school kids who are basketball players. And basketball is an important part of life, but it's not the most important part. Now it's all like the social media and trying to go viral and wanting to get the most likes and views and all that. And like that can be distracting, and that could take away from everything. So I remember being in practice and being like, guys, you gotta like really focus. And I had three simple rules. They were the no cheat rules. Okay. The first thing, you don't cheat on yourself. So if you are in class, you don't cheat yourself out of assignments, you don't cheat yourself out of homework, you don't cheat yourself out of attendance. You have to show up, be present, and work hard. That's how you earn the grades. That's how you learn about who you are and your work ethic. So that's number one. Don't cheat yourself. Okay. Um, I don't even know how I came up with this. I just I don't know. Don't cheat. I don't know. So don't cheat yourself. I always said don't cheat on your girl. Okay. And I had to live that because I was married and I wanted to make sure, like, if y'all was dating, y'all better not be running around here and doing all that. And my last thing was don't you cheat me in this practice. Because if you're not cheating on them things, you shouldn't be cheating me here at practice either. So so don't you cheat in class, don't cheat on your girl, and don't you dare cheat us in this practice. Like you give your all to everything. And I had to lead by example. So when people are asking me, like, how are you and your wife doing or whatever, I tell them, like, look, man, like we're honest with each other, we're true to each other. She knows that I'm gonna make sure that I do everything to be with her, and she's going to do the same to be with me, and we're going to do our best for our kids because it's not just about us, it's about who we're raising and how we want them to live. The same way that I come and coach, it's not just me coaching you to be a great player, it's trying to get you to be a great human being and how you walk and how you lead. Like those are things I try to instill. Now you do one or two things, you could listen to it and hopefully gain some wisdom for it, or you can just go your own way. I just hope that if I'm giving you knowledge and tools, it's putting you in the right direction. And so I always got I would always get that. It was just I don't know what made me come up with that. It worked though. For some people learn a little bit they learn a little bit harder than others, but I will say that all of them always got something out of it, and I think that's important. And it's important how you guide yourself and how you walk, and it's even biblical. It's biblical in how you live your life and how you live out your faith. Ephesians 5:15, and there's different variations of this, but I specifically took this version because there's the part of how you live or how you are in this world, but this particular one, it says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise but as wise. So here's the breakdown. Looking carefully at our spiritual walk is considered wise. The wisdom comes from God, who gives believers the spirit of wisdom. God gives wisdom to the church, making it known to others. Here again, Paul desires believers to grow in maturity. Evangelism is important, but so is the spiritual growth of existing believers. Paul focuses much attention on the spiritual growth of existing believers in the church. Their maturity is important for reaching additional people for Christ. Their maturity. When you start walking with Christ, you will start noticing things a little different. One thing that I think a lot of us deal with, and I saw a really good TikTok post about this. I can't remember the guy's name, but I saw it on somebody else's Facebook page, and they were talking about how it was, when we sin and we repent and we turn to God and we feel this guilt, there's certain things. God says that He will throw your sins as far as east and west, and He will forgive you. And He forgets it, right? Like there's that. You will remember it and hold on to it, but then the devil will constantly remind you about it. And the more the devil reminds you about it, the more you feel guilty. And then you bring it back to God because you feel like God is holding that over your head. When in reality, God has already forgiven you and let it go. And so if God has forgiven it and let it go, we have to do that. In the same breath, as we walk, I think the more we walk with God, the more we'll start to learn that the things that we go through when we are truly forgiven, and this is something that I need to learn for myself. When you're truly forgiven, you are forgiven. When God says, I forgive, He forgives. And whatever lesson that comes out of that, He's going to work that for the greater good of who you are. So regardless of your mistakes, regardless of your past, regardless of the sins you've committed, regardless of how you think, or if you've fallen, if you're trying to beat a sin and you've fallen numerous times, there's still hope. He does not want you to give up because He's going to forgive you and He's going to pick you back up and He's going to dust you off and you're going to learn something every single time. But at some point, when you start walking, you're going to start seeing those same signs and you go, you know what? That's not what I want because I know that's not what God wants me to do. And it's like when you look back and reflect on things, the anxiety of your past can be a hard burden to overcome, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to hold on to that. It can show you that if you were the one making the mistakes, If you look at where you were then and you see where you are now, and you have a different view and you're living a different life, you've grown spiritually from a mature standpoint. That means that God has shown you something. And the fact that you can look back at that and go, man, I don't know what I was thinking then, but I want to make sure that now I never go back to that. Like for me, I look at that stuff and I go, all right, I want to make sure that my kids live better than I did when I was younger. Because a lot of it I tried to figure out on my own. I should have asked more questions, but I wasn't walking in God's light. I knew who God was, but I didn't know what God could do. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I realized, like, oh wow, like this is what he was trying to show me. And now when I look back at those things, I don't need to look back at it in darkness because God's provided a better light that shows me this is where you were, but this is where you are. And if you can look at it now and you are here at this level and you can do your best to try to prevent people from going those paths, you, my friend, are doing well. Goes for you too. If you are in a situation where you're like, man, I've been down that road or I was caught up in this nonsense and I realized that I'm better than that. And now I have a voice to give to others and I could try to help them not make the same mistakes I did because you're looking back at it with a heavy heart because you're like, man, I did that. And Satan is sitting up there reminding you like, you were terrible. You did this, you did that. And God's looking at you and saying, I brought you through that. And not only did I forgive you, but I allowed you to be in a position that lets you give back because you're experienced in that. Now you're able to give back and you're able to help people stray away and come closer to me because they're watching how you walk. And that's what I want to do. And I know like there's more that I need to do. But this podcast helps me because I get a chance to look up Bible verses that I probably wouldn't have just like seeked out on my own and like looking at it. And I'm a different person when I watch my podcast and I'm just like, man, okay, I need to keep putting these things into play and put them into action. And knowing that with every step that I take, regardless of how scared I am or if I'm starting to worry, that doesn't erase God's truth. God's truth is real. And if he says he's going to deliver me from something, that's what he's going to do. If he said he forgave me, that's what he did. If he said that he would never leave me nor forsake me, he's not going to do that. He's with me right now. And I might not be able to see it in the physical, but I also know that God sees what I'm doing. And that right there lets me know that, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that should be the same for you. And so as you are on this walk, so look carefully then how you walk. I hate to do this, but I'm gonna use this example. I think we all have seen the John Morant situation, and there's a lot of things that happen. Now, mind you, he's a 23-year-old with a lot of money, and rose to stardom pretty quickly, and has now caught himself in a situation where he's flashing guns and listening to music and all this other stuff. Okay, so if we look at that as an example, the first thing that most people will do is judge him and call him foolish. You lost a lot of money. You're going to be suspended. You're going to do this and do that. Okay, that's one thing. But let's look at it from this standpoint. I'm going to look at it from a spiritual piece of now where it says here, the wide gate. To have that money, being that young, and I'm not excusing the behavior, but I'm thinking about going from city to city, being recognized, having your jersey in the stores, being a cover athlete, having all this stuff. Like, that's a lot. At the same time, though, you got to be careful about how you walk. And right now, I would wonder, not only is he careful about the walk he's on, but is he careful about who he's walking with? And people are saying it and people are screaming it out, but me and my son were talking about it. He was just like, man, he keeps getting caught up in this stuff. And maybe if you keep walking and you keep seeing the same things over and over again, you might have to redirect yourself. You might just have to use a different path. And maybe that path looks a little more narrower. And maybe that's why you didn't go that way. But there's no time like the present. And we can condemn him and say all these different things. But then I think to myself, like, as much as you can look at what he's going through, it's more amplified because of who he is. But question yourself on, are there things in your walk or people that you walking with that you know you shouldn't be? It's easy to point the finger. It's hard to look at yourself and use accountability. And we all have to go through that at some point. Um, and for John Morant, I would pray that he really seeks and finds, what his true purpose is. Because it's bigger than basketball. It's easy. That's the fun part of what he does. You know what I mean? But I think being that young, he's clearly had to grow up quickly. In the same breath, though, I would say for Ja, I hope that the experience builds him to be a better person more so than a better athlete. And only time will tell, but all I can do is pray for him and trust that God will deliver him from this and he'll learn from it. And people will say what they need to say, but at the end of the day, it's not about what people say. It's about what God's done. It's not about what people think of you. It's what God thinks of you. It's not about the image that people think you should be or think that you're trying to portray. It's more so being made in God's image. I just pray that John Morant gets there. Um, there's been a lot of stories and TikToks and videos and things, when you're on that level, that's kind of what happens. But, you know, we should also pray for the brother too, because he's a very talented young man who has a lot of skill and with the right guidance can be even more powerful. And so I don't know. When you think about it, it's like that's an easy one to look at because it's out here. But then I would question you like this. Sure, look at that situation. But one thing I always try to do is reflect and say, okay, here's your situation. But like, are there areas in my life that I need to fix? Are there places where I'm walking where I know I don't need to go? Are there people that I'm walking with that I know are leading me down a path of destruction? Self reflection and talking to God helps reveal things that you need to see. And hard truths can be very hard to deal with when you have to walk away from something you were so comfortable with. But you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to walk a path you've never done before. It's uncomfortable to look at yourself and say, "Yeah, I was wrong, and I know I need to fix it." But it doesn't mean that you can't start today. It doesn't mean that you can't pick yourself up and say, okay, Lord, I know I need to walk better with you. And I don't necessarily know how I'm going to get there or what I'm going to do or how I'm going to make it. I'm just going to take the first step. And then you put your one foot in front of the other. It's literally one step at a time with what we do. We don't, when we listen to the world, we're going to rush through life. When we listen to God, we'll have peace in life. I don't want any of us to burn out on trying to self fulfill. I think I want us all to fill up on what God has for us. And I say that, and I have to preface this as well as like when I'm talking to you all on a podcast, I'm talking to myself too. I never wanted to come off as like I'm perfect and I got all the answers because I don't. I never wanted to come off of like, yo, I see these Bible verses and I'm out here living my life. No, I'm working on getting to that point. I have influences. I watch how my mother walks. I watch how my sister walks. Two of the strongest women I know that pray super strong. I'm looking at how my wife deals with situations. She prays on everything. I need to do that. I need to be better at that. I need to perfect my walk that way. So how do I do that? First, I turn to God and say, God, this is where I'm at right now. This is how I feel. This is what's going on. Second, I don't know. I want to jump in and give all this effort, but I'm also don't want it to come half-hearted. So I'm just gonna take one step. I'm putting my foot out and I'm saying, okay, Lord, this is the step I'm taking. And I pray that you guide me in the right direction. And that's it. And we trust God with everything. Wherever you are in your walk right now, the first thing I would tell you to do is make sure that God's with you. The second thing I would tell you to do is give thanks to God in all situations and circumstances. And the third thing I would tell you to do is do not run in front of what God has for you. In other words, stop trying to lead on a path that God has directed, because you'll only fall. And as Big Crit said in his song, the more you walk with God, the harder it is to scrape your knee. So walk with him. And always remember that I believe in you. Now go believe in yourself, all right? It's the Overthinking Thoughts Pod. I'm Ed. We out.
These thoughts have been in my head. Things I never did. I took some L's, but I'm still here. I got these thoughts up in my head. I toss and turn about some things I never said. I got regrets about some things I never did. I took some risks and took some L's, but I'm still here. And I know.